Hello guys, welcome back to John's Workshop, and in this video I've got a job that's come into the shop that I need to do for one of my neighbours. So it's a track removal jack for tracked vehicles. So just a bit of background, this kit, and you'll see it in a minute, is ex-British Army stuff, and it was used for, I'm guessing, taking tracks off tanks and things like that. So this is to jack the vehicle up to allow you to remove the tracks, or jack bits of the vehicle up to allow you to move the tracks front and back, that kind of thing. I think there's three of these that the guy's got, and both of them or all of them are broken. So he's dropped some bits off and said, can you do anything with that? So we've got a bit of work to do on that, and I'll show you that in a minute. And I think just to put that into context, so they're not used for tanks today, but they're still used for tracked vehicles. So this is for, the guy does kind of forestry and fencing and that type of stuff, so he's got vehicles with tracks on and he uses them for that sort of application. And so moving on to sort of what's wrong with them, what I'm going to do now is reposition the camera. These bits are far too big for me to hold up and show you where I'm sat just now, so we'll spin the camera around and I'll give you a bit of a look at what we need to be doing on them, and then we'll crack on and get on with it and see whether we can get these fixed up for the guy. Right, so these are the bits. You can probably see by the colour that these are ex-British Army. They've got that green colour on them, incredibly robust, manufactured, and I don't fully know how they work, but you can kind of see how they work. There's a unit here that will sit in different slots there for the actual jack unit to go under the vehicle, and then this whole thing sits on top of, and I ain't got room in the garage, I don't think. I've just about, so that sits on top of here, and basically that slides together as a unit. And what you can't see is the shaft that's come out the top, so we'll just focus in on that and I'll show you what's actually broken. So we're now looking at the top where that shaft with the thread pokes through the top of this, the actual jack piece, if you want to call it that, and what there should be, which is here, is a nut that sits on top of there. Now this nut, you can see, has got pins through it, roll pins through it. It's got two of them at 90 degrees to each other, and that's to pin this nut to the shaft to stop it moving. And basically the idea is now, you put a spanner on there and wind this to operate the jack and lift it up and down. So you can see what's happened. It's sheared off through where one of those pins goes, and yeah, it's quite a bit of a mess. Now the reason it's sheared off, and that both of them are in exactly the same state, the reason they've sheared off is because when this was designed and built, it was designed and built to be used with a normal either ring spanner or open-ended spanner. And I think as time and technology's moved on, not many people use those anymore in the sort of automotive maintenance arena. They tend to use these impact driver type things that you'll see when they spin your wheel nuts off on your car, and that's what they've been using on here. And as a result, what that's done is sheared the shaft off, because it's just not man enough for that kind of torture. So what I need to do is basically, I'll just grab the other one. So here's the other one, same as what's inside this unit here. This one's in exactly the same state. It's failed at exactly the same position through that, where that roll pin went. So what we're going to do is, he's asked me to turn, if I can turn the threads back deeper, turn this bearing location diameter back deeper. Now there is just a couple of bearings that sit on this. There's a bush in the top of here that locates on that bearing diameter, and there's also a thrust bearing that sits on there, that sits underneath here. So when you're jacking, there's a thrust bearing taking the load. So I've got to turn all of this back deeper and to extend this top bit effectively. And then what the guy wants to do is weld on some new nuts, and he's given me one that's going to go on the top. Now I'm not going to do the welding, I'm leaving that up to him. I don't think welding's the right thing, if I'm honest, but I think what we should be doing is fitting a nut properly and putting the roll pins through it. Now I've not got roll pins. He doesn't want to wait for roll pins. He thinks it will just shear, well, which it probably will. You know, if they're going to carry on using the same impact driver, it's just going to have the same thing, you know, same end result. So what we're going to do is weld this bit onto here, and he's going to do that once it's all done, and then that'll be operational again with both these jacks until such point as something breaks. And the trouble then will be, because he's welded this on, he won't be able to split these things apart anymore, but he seems comfortable with that, so that's what we're going to do. So first job really is to get measured up. So I'm going to do all my measurements I need to do, understand basically just the length of this diameter piece and the diameter of it. I need to replicate that, and the length of this piece we need to true this end up, clean it up and extend this longer. And I've also need to bore out the threads at the inside of these two nuts so that there'll be a close fit on that end of that shaft so that you can weld them in position. So that's what we're going to do largely. So I'll do a bit of measuring up, and then one last thing I've got to do right in the top here. There's a brass bush in this one. It's well, brass, or it could even be phosphor bronze, I'm not sure, it might be phosphor bronze. He's lost the bush out of the other one of these that I've not got. He took that back with him and he said could I knock him a new brass bush up to sit in the other one of these units. So I've got one brass bush to make, and then two of these to extend down, and two of the nuts to bore out, so there'll be a good fit on the new turn bit so he can weld it all back together. So that's the job. Big stuff for my shop. Now very nicely made actually, by the way, incredibly nicely manufactured, but you'd expect that. This is probably 40-50 years old, and it would have been made when things were made to a you know, really good quality standard, and you can tell that just by looking at the threads and the way they've been turned. They're incredibly nice. So I'll bring you back in a bit, we'll do some measurement. You don't need to see that, I'll measure that up for my own reference, make a quick sketch, and I'll join you on the lathe when we're getting this set up to do the turning work. Right guys, we've got it in the four-jaw. I've got some aluminium packers between the jaws and the part so that I don't damage the threads, and I've got my clock in, and I've just got it somewhere nearby eye, and I've just put the clock on, and we're probably at about 25-30 thou out. So I'm just going to move the camera stand out my way, and I'll focus in on the clock, and we'll just get that clocked in, and then we're ready to start the turning on the first one. Happy with that? We'll just check. Yep, we're on centre, and I'm just going to check it in and out, make sure it's square. Yeah, looks pretty good. So we're set up on the first one. I'll bring you back, I'll move the camera again, bring you back in a minute. We'll get in with the turning tool and start extending this back into the threaded portion. Right, for what this is, he said he's not bothered how much length we lose, and this end piece here sits in the brass bushes that I'm going to make, and where this is broken off, I've measured the shaft and it's out of round, it's deformed. So we're going to lose this end piece completely, and the smaller diameter piece will come out of what is now the bearing diameter bit, and then the bearing diameter bit will come out of the next bit of the shaft, and then that way I've got clean diameters all the way down, and I know they're concentric to where the original bearing diameter was. I've not got my thin parting off tool set. I don't want to try and put a 5mm wide parting off tool through this because of how I'm holding and what I'm holding on. So for what this is, we're just going to hacksaw this end piece off somewhere near, and then we'll face it up. Worthy of showing. Got the idiot piece of wood there, so if I slip, I'm not going to damage my bed. This is where we find out it's 65 Rockwell, and I'm going to have a nightmare. Thank God for that. There we go. For the sake of 2 off, it's far quicker to do that than it is to strip a tool down in one of my holders and set a new tool up. So that's why we use the hacksaw. I'll get going, get the turning tool set and bring you back. that's it. That's got our first one turned up. We've got hit our numbers, so we'll take this out now, do some clean up on the ends of the thread, which will be a bit of handwork, and then we'll get the second one brought up to this same standard. I'll not film that because it's exactly the same, and then we'll move on to the brass bushes. I need to make two actually. I knocked the bush, it's actually phosphor bronze, the bush out of the end of that, the jack piece that I showed you earlier, and when I looked at it, it's absolutely hammered oval from use. So I'm going to turn 2 new brass bushes up to fit, and then the last job will be the threaded nuts that I just need to open the holes out through the centre. So I'll bring you back when we're doing the brass bushes. We've got our bit of brass loaded up to make these 2 bushes, so I'm looking for 17.95 OD, 12mm reamed ID, and then parted off 2 of those at 12mm wide. So nice and easy. We'll crack on with that now. Tiny bit under centre with that. Just lift that up a tad. Alright guys, we're onto the nuts now. We just need to open these out to 12mm, so the clearance on the turning that I've done on the threaded shafts. Excuse the background noise, that's my dehumidifier doing overtime, because as usual it's pouring me rain. Right, let's just drop these in. Nothing flash about this, they're only going to be welded into place, so that should do us. Not going to go too fast with this because of the zinc plating that's on these, or galvanised, sorry, well it is zinc, but galvanised, it's a bit tough and hard and nasty, so, and I'm only going to be taking the crests of the threads out, so it's not going to cut particularly well, so we'll take it nice and steady. I'll just get the camera out of the way and we'll crack on and get both of these done. That's one done. You don't want to watch the other one, it will sound equally as horrible as that one did. I'll get them both done the same, and then we'll come back and show you all the bits done and wrap the episode up. Alright guys, there we go. Got both the shafts done the same, both the nuts modified, two new brass bushes, bearings, whatever we want to call them, made up to replace the one that I'd got to go off, which is actually phosphor bronze, but it's in a pretty dire state, so he said he only wanted one for the one that he'd lost, but looking at the state of this when I took it out, I just thought, I'll make two while I'm at it, it's just as quick. And obviously the nuts to replace this part that was broken off the end of the shaft originally, the original nut with the roll pins in. So just wanted to put this together now. What I didn't show at the start of the episode was this bit, and this is a steel flange that goes on onto these diameters, this bearing diameter here. This sits on there, and on top of that sits the thrust bearing arrangement that then sits inside the jack to take the axial load. I've only got one of these. I'm just hoping the guy I'm doing this for has got the other one. I think he has, with the bearings. He was looking for some new bearings for these while he was at it, so we'll fit this one back on one of the shafts, test fit the two bushes, drop the nuts on loosely, and we'll tell him it's all ready for him to come and collect. So we'll just try and fit that now. I'm just going to put a drop of oil in it because it's a tight, should be a good tight fit on this diameter, so we'll just do that now. Don't need a lot, just a tiny drip. Yeah, that's a really good fit on there. I mean, that's not going to spin, the bearings do the spinning on top of that, so that's fine. And then we've got the new bush that I've made, which is a really good fit on that diameter, and that goes into the end of the jack. And then we've got the nuts, which are again a good fit, and what I've done is made them and left him about 8mm gap in the top that he can puddle weld into the top of the shaft when he's got the things put back together. So that's the job done. First and probably last of those that I'll ever do. So that was a bit interesting. So we'll just break that now and we'll wrap this episode up. So there we go then guys, that's the end of the tank or tracked vehicle jack repair. I'll get those passed back on to my neighbour, and just in case the taxman's watching, this is going back to olden times as how we work around here, so no money's been taken for this job, and what it all means is I don't have to spend a couple of hours next year cutting all my hedge out the front of the property, because next time he's down with his tractor, that's what he's going to do. So that's how it works. All very accommodating and all very nice. That's one job I now know that I've not got to look forward to next year. So that's all good. So something a little bit different, nothing very special really, but I hope you've enjoyed that, and thank you to the subscribers for your continued support, and also thank you to the new subscribers. There's a few more coming along. I've had a couple of shout outs recently which has helped the numbers a little bit, and hopefully now next week I keep saying this, but hopefully next week we'll be getting back onto another bit of the Mark engine. I really want to crack on now with the cylinder. That's going to be quite an interesting one to do. However, I'm waiting for some tooling to arrive for that, so it might not be for next week, that one, but certainly we'll be back doing something else anyway, messing around in here. So thank you all very much for watching, and we'll catch you all very soon on another video when we'll be making something else.